what was the charge, or didn't they give you one? They gave me one. He let out a soft snort and said, praising America. And were you praising America? No, I was praising the Americas. I was in a queue with Kitty and I was praising the Americas. Then we both did something we hadn't been expecting to do for some time to come. We laughed, with our vapor forming and fleeing. I understood the Americas was sibling code for Zoya. And it was a good name for her too, because it caught her walk. It is a love story, and it's, as you concede, Russian love, which tends to be perverse and self-destructive. It's a love triangle between two brothers and a woman.
Martin Amis was a published and attention-grabbing novelist at 24. To some, he's Britain's greatest living writer, but he's almost as famous for being passed over for the literary baubles. Now 57, he's written his 11th novel, and observers detect a change in the reigning champion of the page.
I mean, I grew up with him. I'm the generation of writers who will always, whatever I think of his books, will always stick by him, will always read his stuff, because I've read almost every word of his, that he ever wrote. I always stick with him just to see what he's like. It's like, the rock band you liked when you were 17. You'll still listen to the records that the gnarled old survivors are making, because you grew up with them. They're part of your emotional heritage.
He thought he was immortal. He was the enfant terrible of English fiction till well into his 40s. Well, he doesn't accept that anymore. I think he's trying to change, as it were, the kind of parameters a bit.
There was much anticipation about Amis's new book, speculation that it would deal with 9/11. Would it win him the Booker Prize at last? In fact, the subject matter is the Soviet Gulag, and a terrible irony that Amis came across.
Discovering that there were conjugal visits in the Gulag, a ridiculous and pathetic thing, and a tragic, invariably tragic outcome for these visits. It would certainly remind you of what life and love is like outside, and you would then have to, the house of meetings always being a house of partings as well. You'd go back into slavery. And at the very least, I think, a great display of impotence from the men, because with chronic hunger, the male hormones are no longer produced. So the poor bastards would have to swagger off as if very much looking forward to this meeting, and then stagger back.
He suddenly got old and grave and serious in a very self-conscious way. He's only 57. When his father was that age, he was writing books about sex therapy, Jake's Thing and that kind of stuff. But I think there's a conscious reaching out for seriousness and last things and grave goods almost in this. The story about a Russian labor camp, you can't get much more serious than that.
In the 70s and 80s, Amis made his reputation with a series of dazzling black comedies.
I was sitting there waiting for the grub to show when Martin Amis came through the open door. The writer I was chatting to in the pub the other night.
They included Money, arguably his best book, in which the writer gave himself a cameo appearance.
And Martin sat down opposite and quickly flattened a book out in front of him. This kid's going to ruin his eyes. You want a drop of this?
No thanks. I try not to drink at lunchtime.
So do I. I never quite make it.
I feel like shit all day if I drink at lunchtime.
Me too. I feel like shit all lunchtime if I don't.
I'm sure you don't go home and flip through your canon of an evening.
Having an evening curled up with me used to be my idea of an unimprovable, night out, as it were. But I haven't. As you get older, you get more and more impatient with what's gone, and even reading through your proofs seems like a retrograde activity. You're much more directed towards the future. Looking back at those early testosterone novels, all I can say is that the constant theme is masculinity and its vulnerabilities and its contradictions, and that I don't think has wavered much. I think this book is just as much about that as my first.
Martin Amis's father, Kingsley, had to wait until his mid-60s to win the Booker Prize. Martin isn't on the list again this year.
My father, when he won it, said he'd always had his doubts about the Booker Prize, but they seemed to have evaporated in the last few minutes when he found out he'd won it. It's tawdry, really. Winning the Booker Prize does simplify your life, I think.
Because it gets it over with.
Well, as Salman Rushdie said, they can't get you then. It's like Beckham being captain of England, he said, they can't take that away from me,
Amos has said very hard things about Booker judges, particularly when he's in America, is that he despises them. Perhaps for a good reason. Who are they? I mean, when did they ever write a London Fields or a Times Arrow or a House of Meetings?
Well, there's been some incredibly eccentric choices, like who is the guy, A, B, C, D, F, G?
Pierre.
Yeah. I mean,
did you try that one?
I looked at it. Yeah. I think it's a sort of big brother for writers, isn't it? It's they're all sweating into their tuxedos and ball gowns, and it's a way of what England loves to do, which is to take away the pretensions of the writers and see them sweating with greed and egocentricity.
And run a book on it on the side.
You can bet on it. Yeah. The bookie prize.
You seem, if I may say so, quite serene. I think it's just as well you're back here, away from the pampas.
There are only two civilized bits of South America, Uruguay and Chile, and we were in Uruguay. Everyone else is all the other countries are sort of nutcase-countries.
We'll get lots of letters.
Yeah, well, it's true. But the big difference between South America and North America is that in North America, the settlers raped the women and then killed them. In South America, they raped the women and then married them, which is better. It's mejor. Coming back to London, what I feel above all else is that it's on the face of it, and I'm sure there are difficulties, but marvelously successful multiracial society.
Don't tell us you're going soft on the old place.
I think I got at least one more London novel in me, and so it's good to be back here, because London has really been my subject.